Buonasera, bentornati, benvenuti alle Conversazioni, questo è il 12° anno. Voglio ringraziare innanzitutto tutti gli sponsor e tutti coloro che hanno reso possibile questa 12ª edizione. Voglio ringraziare Davide Azzolini, che non vedo, ma è il cofondatore e il co-direttore del festival. Voglio ringraziare tutti gli ospiti, ne vedrete per 6 serate, e anche alcuni ospiti degli anni passati che sono tornati. Nel corso di questa serata e delle altre serate li indicherò e li festeggeremo. Prima di invitare sul palcoscenico, anzi su questa sedia, l'ospite di stasera, voglio dirvi una cosa, perché da stamattina che mi fanno tutti la stessa domanda. Che idea meravigliosa parlare di bugie nell'anno di Trump. Ecco, noi abbiamo pensato abbiamo deciso di parlare di bugie quando Trump non esisteva, almeno come presidente, quindi è del tutto occasionale. Siamo stati un po' fortunati, un po' profetici, ma soprattutto a me interessa sviluppare il tema della bugia non da un punto di vista politico. Ci arriveremo, lo faremo, ma a me interessa qualcos'altro, lo capirete dalla prima domanda che farò all'ospite di questa sera. Non aggiungo altro e chiamo qui sul palcoscenico Elif Batuman. Ecco. Elif ha scritto solo 2 libri, è già una delle voci più interessanti, appassionanti e eccitanti della letteratura mondiale. Benvenuta.
Grazie.
Ormai credo che conosciate tutti il format di queste serate. Abbiamo chiesto ai nostri scrittori di scrivere appunto un saggio o qualcosa, anche di fiction se vogliono, sul tema scelto, che è appunto le bugie, e loro leggeranno il loro testo, dal loro testo inizierà una conversazione, e poi abbiamo deciso stasera, perché lo chiedo prima ai nostri ospiti, di lasciare anche un po' di spazio alle domande dal pubblico, se ne avrete. Quindi, senza perdere altro tempo, chiedo a Elif di cominciare a leggere il suo testo.
Molto grazie. Son? Thank you all so much for coming. I'm so happy to be here. I was a boy who told lies. That's the first line of Isaac Babel's short story, In the Basement, written in 1929. Everyone who loves Babel knows this opening, which has taken on a kind of emblematic significance within his tricky and elusive body of work. There's a sense in which Babel seems to be saying that that's what writers do. Writers tell lies. In The Great Gatsby, written in 1925, Fitzgerald's narrator, Nick Carraway, seems to make a diametrically opposite assertion. Everyone suspects himself of at least one of the cardinal virtues, and this is mine. I am one of the few honest people that I have ever known. Here's the question I want to ask today. Does literature lie, or does it tell the truth? Poetry has always existed in a kind of limbo between lies and the truth. That's why Plato didn't want poets in the Republic. But the truth status of literature got even more complicated in the early 17th century with the publication of Cervantes's Don Quixote. After a lifetime of reading chivalric romances, Cervantes's hero, born Alonso Quijano, decides to turn his life into a chivalric romance. He puts on a suit of cardboard armor, changes his name to Don Quixote, and sets out into the world looking for giants to slay. But instead of giants, he sees only windmills, and when he tries to kill one, he breaks his lance and hurts his shoulder. Don Quixote has been considered a critique, even a savage critique, of chivalric romance. In one famous scene, the so-called Book Inquisition, the priest and the barber go through Quixote's library, destroying some of the lying romances and keeping others. When critics write about this scene, they tend to emphasize the destroyed books and to neglect the ones that are spared, sometimes even implying that the former outnumber the latter. To quote one scholar, the curate and the barber save a few volumes from the general auto-da-fe of books. Or another, the priest and the barber hold an inquisition over the knight's books and order most of them to be burned. But back when I was a over-literal graduate student working on a dissertation about novels, I decided to count the exact number of books that are destroyed, and I found that of 30 books in the library, only 14 are burned, and exactly 14 more are pardoned, and 2 of them are put on probation for having some flaws. Why is it important that the number of destroyed books is the same as the number of preserved books? It's important because it shows Cervantes's mathematically balanced fidelity to the truth and to the so-called false and foolish tales of the books of chivalry. The novel form invented by Cervantes is an inextricable synthesis of lies and the truth, which comes from lived experience. According to the scholar Michel Jeanneret, Renaissance literature is characterized by 2 classical modes of imitation, imitatio and mimesis. These 2 modes correspond to the 2 poles of the novel, to the lies and the truth, to the giant and the windmill. Imitatio, in this context, means the replication of classical literature and canonical discourses. Mimesis is the replication of nature. Without mimesis, imitatio is mere formal acrobatics, a language game that can't let reality in. Without the windmill, the giant is sterile, unrealistic, a kind of formal language with no reality behind it. And yet, without imitatio, mimesis is meaningless, a shopping list that doesn't let reality in either. Without the idea of giants, the landscape is just one windmill after another. Without imitatio, without old romances and artifice and lies, we simply have no way to digest unmediated reality. We don't have any way in. Let's take another look at the opening of In the Basement. I was a boy who told lies, Babel writes. This came from reading. I read during class, between classes, on my way home, and under the table at night. Reading books, I missed out on everything the world around me had to offer. I had no friends. Who would have wanted to spend time with someone like me? Too true. The initiating event of In the Basement is that the narrator, thanks to his storytelling skills, manages to finally win over one friend, Borgman, the best student in the class, the son of a bank director. The stories that the narrator tells, they all come from books and not from life, so basically they're lies. Some of the stories are about his uncle, Simon Wolf, whom he describes as a romantic hero of the Russian-Turkish War. When Borgman visits the narrator's house, the actual uncle turns up, bearing no resemblance to that romantic hero, drunk, spewing Yiddish curses, accompanied by the local junk dealer. He's carrying some kind of alarming furniture made out of antlers. Borgman is terrified. The narrator's grandfather appears on the scene and tries to improve things by playing his violin, but only manages to frighten Borgman more. The grandfather, we learn, has spent the day working on his magnum opus, a manuscript titled The Headless Man, containing a description of all his neighbors over a period of 60 years. The mortified narrator tries to distract Borgman from his embarrassing relatives by reciting the burial monologue from Julius Caesar. "If you have tears, prepare to shed them now," he shouts. Borgman flees in terror. The narrator, crushed, goes to the basement and tries to drown himself in a barrel. Like Quixote getting thrown through the air by the windmill, Babel's narrator is almost physically destroyed by the incommensurability between his real life and his favorite books. And yet, it is from that incommensurability that the story itself springs. Just as the plot of Don Quixote is generated by the clash between the chivalric romance and the realities of 17th century La Mancha, so is In the Basement generated by a clash between the narrator's favorite Western European books and the real Odessa Jewish life he tries to ignore. It's a clash between Julius Caesar and the Headless Man, and neither is allowed to win. Without what we might call the Julius Caesar element, Without the influence of pre-existing literature, high literary language, and classical rhetoric, the headless man element would overwhelm us. There would just be a long, incomprehensible list of neighbors, undertakers, cantors, Jewish drunks. But without that list of real, vernacular-speaking neighbors, any repetition of high Shakespearean language would be just that, a repetition, a language game. There would be no reality in it. The Great Gatsby, much like The Headless Man, is a chronicle of the author's neighbors, principally of Jay Gatsby, who owns the house next to Nick Carraway's in the town of West Egg. The duality of imitatio and mimesis, lies and the truth, giants and windmills, is played out in the relationship between the narrator and the hero. Jay Gatsby, born James Gatz in North Dakota, is a boy who told lies, the creator of a fictional persona based on childish fantasies. Nick Carraway eventually sees these lies for what they are, writing of his friend. He invented just the sort of Jay Gatsby that a 17-year-old boy would be likely to invent, and to this conception, he was faithful to the end. But those adolescent inventions are what transform Nick's own life into the material of a great novel. Without Gatsby, Nick would be a depressed veteran selling bonds in Long Island. Conversely, without Nick's narration, Gatsby's story would sound naive, cliché, false. I lived like a young Raja in all the capitals of Europe, Paris, Venice, Rome, collecting jewels, chiefly rubies, hunting big game, painting a little, and trying to forget something very sad that happened to me long ago, Gatsby tells Nick at one point. Gatsby himself could never write a book like The Great Gatsby, but Nick couldn't have written it without him either. Every novelist is two people, a liar in love with old books, and a truthful chronicler of windmills and neighbors. Literature lies without stopping, but it never gives up on telling the truth. Thank you.
Voglio ringraziare Elif per questo magnifico pezzo, sul quale adesso cominciamo a riflettere, ma come vi avevo detto abbiamo con noi alcuni ospiti delle passate stagioni che mi fa piacere indicare qui nell'audience. C'è Anana al-Sheikh con noi, la ringraziamo per essere ritornata, è venuta a trovarci anche Donna Tart, grazie per essere con noi, e c'è l'ospite di domani, Adam Gopnik, che è qui con noi. Allora, Elif, la mia prima domanda parte dalla tua conclusione. Se l'arte pensi che sia una esperienza di menzogna o bugia o di verità?
Well, oh, sorry.
Thank you very much, Elif, for this wonderful piece. I was mentioning before that we have guests from the past festivals, and we have tonight Anan al-Shaikh, Donna Park, and Adam Gopnik that we'll hear tomorrow. My first question starts from the conclusion of your piece. Do you think art is telling the truth or telling lies then?
Well, the art form that interests me the most, and which I've always wanted to practice, is the novel. I recently published my first novel, and my feeling is that the novel is it's a synthesis that didn't exist before between lies and the truth. So when we think of, so one thing that I have kind of an issue with today is the equation of lies and fiction. There's a very brilliant essay by the literary critic Kathy Gallagher called The Rise of Novelistic Fictionality, where she talks about how the category of fiction arose around in English in the 18th century around the same time as the English novel, and that the novel invited a new kind of thinking that was characterized by verisimilitude and entertaining counterfactuals, which she says were necessary for the new calculations that were necessary for the insurance trade and also for the marriage market, which was forced people to perform this kind of cognitive counterfactual imagining for the first time. Should I pause there?
Maybe, thank you.
La forma d'arte che mi interessa maggiormente è naturalmente quella del romanzo. Io ho di recente completato il mio primo romanzo e trovo che il romanzo, la narrazione, sia veramente la sintesi perfetta delle bugie e della verità. Quello che mi dà particolarmente fastidio è l'equazione che si tende a fare tra le bugie e la finzione, e a questo proposito c'è un saggio particolarmente interessante che analizza appunto il fatto che la finzione, la narrazione letteraria si è sviluppata nel XVIII secolo parallelamente al romanzo inglese, perché rispondeva a un desiderio, a un bisogno di verosimiglianza da un lato e un resoconto che potesse anche intrattenere comunque il pubblico, i lettori, perché questo doveva far gioco in qualche modo al commercio delle assicurazioni e a quello dei matrimoni che venivano contratti all'epoca con vari interessi.
And if you look at Don Quixote, which is what I was talking about in this essay, of course that was written considerably before the 18th century, although I guess there was also already insurance then. Sorry, never mind that. But so before Don Quixote, if you wanted to say, I went out and I killed 5 giants and then I killed a dragon and then I found a fortune and I gave it to a beautiful princess, you could just say that. And Cervantes kind of invented this debt to reality that you have to show in some plausible way where that story intersected with your lived experience. And to me, that balancing act of showing both the story that you kind of wish that you were telling or that you read and liked when you were a child, and reconciling it and bringing it into some kind of meaningful synthesis with your actual open-ended lived experience is the task of the novel, which puts it somewhere between lies and the truth.
Naturalmente il Don Quixote di cui io parlo nel mio pezzo, nel mio saggio, è stato scritto molto prima del XVIII secolo, ma diciamo che fino ad allora sì, si poteva naturalmente dire che una persona aveva ucciso 5 giganti e poi 5 draghi, aveva trovato il tesoro ed era scappato con la principessa, ma di fatto il cambiamento che c'è stato con l'introduzione di quel tipo di romanzo, del romanzo inglese, e con Don Quixote prima ancora, è il debito nei confronti della realtà che la narrazione letteraria ha, nel senso che quella stessa storia di pura finzione, di pura invenzione, diventa plausibile nel momento in cui è intessuta del vissuto della nostra propria esperienza, e quindi c'è il concetto di verosimiglianza, ed è la storia che ciascuno di noi desidererebbe di poter raccontare, perché di fatto arriva a conciliare, a essere una perfetta sintesi tra la finzione, l'elemento di non realtà, e la realtà stessa. In questo senso è proprio questo lo scopo del romanzo.
Brava! That was amazing!
Mi permetto di fare una domanda intima. Puoi raccontarci un momento di falsità, o se preferisci una menzogna, una bugia, che ti è stata utile in qualche momento della tua vita o della tua carriera?
A personal question now. Can you tell us a moment, a personal moment of falsehood, of lying that turned out to be useful in your career?
I find that the part of my career which calls upon my facility of lying the most is precisely doing interviews like this, because what I didn't realize when I wrote my first book and I started doing publicity, is that the interview, like the sonnet, is a form with very particular rules, and observing those rules is just as important, or maybe more important, than providing a transparent mirror to the truth of your underlying soul. So, for example, when I first started doing interviews, if someone asked me, Elif, what's your favorite color? I would say, well, I've always had ambivalent feelings about dividing the spectrum into particular colors. And I've learned now that what you should say is to make some kind of a generous fiction. I share your feeling that lies are often the more generous and sociable way to proceed. And now if someone asks me my favorite color, I will say it's the color of fresh hazelnuts on the first day of spring in the south of Turkey.
Ma devo dire che all'inizio della mia carriera ho compreso molto rapidamente che mi riesce più facile mentire in situazioni come questa, nel momento in cui devo rendere un'intervista. Quando ho scritto appunto il mio primo libro e ho cominciato a fare la promozione del libro e quindi a rilasciare una serie di interviste, ho capito nel giro di breve tempo che ci sono delle regole molto precise nelle interviste e la cui osservanza è assolutamente fondamentale, perché io all'inizio pensavo che la sincerità fosse assolutamente un dovere, bisognava dare delle risposte che fossero lo specchio dell'anima nella sua essenza, e un giorno mi sono resa conto, quando mi è stato chiesto: Elif, ma qual è il tuo colore preferito? E io anziché dare una risposta ho sempre fatto fatica a dividere lo spettro cromatico nei singoli colori. In realtà ed è il momento in cui davvero si è molto più generosi quando si mente e si diventa molto più socievoli. Ho dato una risposta tipo: è il colore delle nocciole fresche a primavera nel sud della Turchia.
Sono molto meno bravo di te, direi che il blu, senza esitazione. C'è una citazione famosa che è stata attribuita da alcuni a Mark Twain, da altri a Benjamin Disraeli. Non so di chi sia, però la citazione è bella e la lancio ad Elif per avere una sua risposta o un suo ragionamento, che è questa. Ci sono 3 tipi di bugie: le bugie, le sfacciate bugie e la statistica.
I will be much worse, and I will say my favorite color is blue. Now I would like your comment on a quote that might be from Disraeli. Some people say it's Mark Twain, that said there are 3 types of lies: lies, dumb lies, and statistics.
I have to say that one of the most fun parts of this conference so far was listening to the debate between Antonio and the brilliant translator about how to translate damn lies into Italian.
Uno dei momenti più appassionanti è stato ascoltare Antonio